Okay, thank you. I'm going to throw a few rocks into the pond. If I had time, they'd be nuanced rocks, but I don't. As a contributor, player, and probably obfuscator in the energy sector for over 35 years, what we're talking about today are things that we have talked about for far too long. We've tried, we've worked at it, however, we've not done well enough. Our actual delivery is not what it needs to be. We haven't evolved sufficiently, and we haven't evolved fast enough. So the platform that we face now as we want to move forward is one of cynicism, I would say even more than skepticism. And we also have to look at what it is that we cannot change, that won't change. And so I have a slightly contrary view about where politicians sit. They're not long-term thinkers. It's really unreasonable for us to expect that they will carve out a really long-term vision and that they can work on that. It doesn't mean that they aren't well-intentioned. It doesn't mean that they don't have aspirations. But ultimately, the political cycle is 4 to 5 years. They become enslaved to that. And it gets in the way of the kind of investments that we need to progress and change our energy sector in this country. The private sector, much more room for change. It's still ingrained. We still have a narrow agenda. It tends to be around building a project. Yes, we're better at community engagement and involvement, but it's still narrow and it's still somewhat arrogant and it's rather project-based. Regulators, they are by their very definition risk-averse. They've been asked to be so because they're looking at protecting public safety and they're looking for public equity. However, if you've ever tried to get approval at a regulator to support an innovative technology testing and adoption, and get that put into the rate base, it's close to impossible. So there are opportunities, I think, to change the way that regulators can operate, but you have to take the rules off them. They can't continue to operate in the way that they have. We've heard a lot about data weakness. There used to be a lot more data gathered that was in the public domain. Clearly, we still collect data, but not enough quality, quantity, or availability of it. When we look at policy, which is really driven by public servants, they're outside all of this action. They're in it, they talk to you all the time, but they have limited accountability for policy that doesn't work. And they will be moved on to another department where they can go and work on other areas. So continuity and consistency of effort around policy is a very difficult thing to ask governments to do. It doesn't mean we don't need them, but again, we need to change the rules. And I often think we should look at different kinds of performance requirements and opportunities for officials. So if we looked for innovation, and innovation in processes, innovation in technology and business processes, we need a bit of a revolution. And I don't know why this revolution doesn't talk more about the exciting side of things. The conversation needs to include some of the things that Alan referred to about opportunities. There is a multi-trillion-dollar global market for clean technologies. Canada is a leader in building these clean tech companies. They are there to provide solutions and opportunities for industry to adopt so that they can become more effective and efficient and lower carbon. We have not seen sufficient domestic procurement. Most of these companies, their majority of their revenues are in the export market. But that means that the companies here that aren't adopting them are less competitive globally. And there are many different sectors that could work in. So I think that that's part of the exciting story and part of the trade-off as we talk about, well, we do need pipelines, we do need to have projects that are delivering more energy, but how can we do it in a way that minimizes the amount of demand by doing things that are more creative and building jobs and opportunities that go with that. And to me, climate change and the economy and energy are inextricably linked. I wanted to talk a little bit about how we can be more innovative in our processes. And that perspective that I draw on comes from my opportunity being on the board of Quest, Quality Urban Energy Systems for Tomorrow, which never ceases to impress me with what such a small team of very hardworking, committed people who want to empower society and do so in a way that is neutral. They have been able to do a couple of things. You've heard the adjectives before, but they are a trusted convener of a wide diversity of players that need to be at the table. We all know the energy sector is highly complex, and those agendas don't mesh very well, and I don't think there are enough honest conversations about how we can all interface with each other, what that impact will be, positive or negative, and how we can therefore serve society better. This element, though, around community is really important. Quest's aim is to see every community in Canada as self-defined as a smart energy community. What does that mean? And those conversations do take into account the demand and the supply side. And we've seen tremendous progress when we do get all those players in the room. And I commend to you that you might want to look at this approach more frequently as a way of trying to move forward on projects and even on a strategy. We do lack that broader vision. I was part of a thing called the Espanola Power Savers program back in the 1980s when I was at Ontario Hydro. That was a community-based conservation project. Suffice it to say that it was led by the community. So yes, the technical work and all the cost-benefit analyses and all of the other pieces were done by Hydro employees, but we trained the local community college to train the trades that were doing the retrofit work on the energy efficiency side. We were responsive and led by a community advisory committee that asked us to do things that we weren't quite sure about, but they asked, so we had to respond. We gave them a lot of power. To Meredith's point, the kids were the best. They understood the whole picture within about 10 minutes and were nagging their parents to be more energy efficient and get on board. So the youth aspect there was really impressive. Suffice it to say that there was an unprecedented 85% market uptake on the various kinds of energy efficiency retrofits, and about 20% of energy reduced for that area, all costed against the avoided cost of extended transmission and margin generation on the margin. So what we're seeing still is provinces, and I'll quote Ontario because I see more of it, roll out energy efficiency programs that are sort of one-offs. You can participate, you can apply, but there you go. Have we not yet learned that we need to aggregate those thoughts and look at how we can best benefit the energy system? Maybe it's taking load off a transformer substation or whatever, but do that with a community viewpoint so the community understands what it does for them. But I think one of the hardest things that we all face is that the projects that we talk about are really a test of our nation, of our federation. I'm working in the capital markets area, and it's exactly the same issue. We need to have a framework of common rules that are consistently applied across the country. It doesn't mean that every project that is right will look the same, clearly not. But we have to find ways to do that, because I think we seem to be a little bit too inward looking around how we're going to get all these done. We need to mobilize private capital. That capital can invest anywhere in the world that it wishes to do so. So whether it's investment in renewables or pipelines or clean tech, we have to be a competitive jurisdiction to mobilize that capital. Are they going to put money into a water project in Singapore, a manufacturing plant in Germany, or are they going to pick Canada? And currently we are not competitive. And we have to change, and that means both compromise and courage. I think the other thing that we've heard referred to, and I certainly support that, is we haven't painted a compelling picture of what that vision should be for Canada. We all have various elements or ingredients for success. We can all benefit. We are a wonderfully diverse country. That diversity gives us strength. We have a willingness to listen. We have a reasonable level of respect, great resources. We really could transform this country, but we need to come together as a federation. And I think all of the people in this room could do as good a job as the federal government in defining what that vision would be.